Hey there, Wargamers. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Justin the Arm Painter, and today we're going to approach Wargaming from a different angle by breaking down some chess concepts. I'd like to welcome you guys back to the channel. If you're new here, please alpha strike that like and subscribe button. And if you are a returning viewer here, thank you so much for continuing to help support what I do, helping fuel the algorithm and helping the channel grow. That said, today we're going to approach Wargaming from a different angle by breaking down chess concepts and how they apply to games like Battletech Alpha Strike. You'd be surprised how similar the tactical depth of chess and Wargaming can be. So let's go ahead and jump right in. So let's start with material count, which is all about the units you've got on the table. In chess, you're counting how many pieces each player has left. In Alpha Strike, I think of this as critical mass, which we have talked about before. The balance of how many units I have compared to my opponent and how valuable those units are. Trading is a natural part of the game. You'll lose units, but the key is to make sure you're trading effectively. Here's the thing. If you're trading 1 for 1, but your opponent unit was more valuable than yours, you're probably winning that trade. But if you keep losing your key pieces while only taking out weaker units in return, you'll quickly find yourself in a critical mass situation where your opponent has fewer, or might potentially have fewer, but far more powerful units than yours remaining, and it might end up skewing it to where you have a hard time trying to achieve victory in the game. Material count goes beyond simply trading units, however. While in chess, units might be assigned a value that can help quantify which player has the advantage. In wargaming, some of this is qualified by scoring objectives. Much like trading material with your opponent with your miniatures, ideally trading less valuable units for their more expensive game-defining ones, you might also consider the concept of conceding objectives. In a match with an odd number of objectives, for example, it's often worth conceding some of the points to your opponent so you can leverage your units on scoring a majority of points, but not all. For example, in a 3-objective game, you only need to focus on 2 objectives to get ahead. Now you're playing an attrition-style game and need to make sure your material trades with your miniatures are extremely efficient. In a game with 5 objectives, you only really need to focus on holding 3 of the 5. The key here is making tactical trades and not stretching yourself too thin. You don't have to win by a mile, so to speak. Sometimes an inch is all you're going to need. So now, let's get into piece activity. Piece activity is all about who has more to work with. In chess, you want to activate pieces that control the board. In Alpha Strike, it's a bit more nuanced. On one hand, you want to have more units to activate each turn because it gives you more flexibility and control. But on the other hand, you also need valuable units that can deal real damage. We talked about that with the tentpole discussions previously. If you have lots of cheap units left, but no heavy hitters, you may find yourself struggling to put a dent in your opponent, as we discussed previously with the concept of critical mass. Conversely, if you've got a few powerful units, but your opponent has more stuff to activate, they can manipulate the flow of the game by controlling positioning and objectives. Finding that balance between having enough active units while still fielding powerful pieces is key. Kind of comes back again to the critical mass. Making sure when you're list building, you're taking into consideration activation count as well as unit count for your forces will help, and it will also continue to play into the concept of critical mass. During your games, making sure each turn you're reassessing the game state and making yourself aware of what material you have to maneuver on the table versus what your opponent has, both quantity and quality-wise. Will help you to make more efficient, more effective as well as efficient tactical choices. So next up, let's go ahead and talk about pawn structure, or in wargaming terms, how you position and deploy your units. In chess, pawn structure controls space and dictates how the game unfolds, the opening moves in particular. In Alpha Strike, I apply a similar logic, especially when we consider the initial deployment of our forces, which is very similar to the first several opening moves a chess player might make with their pawns, which often dictates how the rest of the match will play out or the flow of the game. When I'm setting up for a game, I like to deploy my slower units, those big lumbering mechs, towards the center of my deployment zone. Why? And that's because they'll have a harder time diverting to far areas of the table if I start them in a corner. The center gives them more options as the game progresses and allows me to effectively divert them where I need them to go. As an example, I could take my fast Mad Cat, put it in the corner of the table, and with a 12-inch move, I know how far I can traverse the table. On the extreme end, I might have an Annihilator that is it's either speed 4 or speed 6. Let's go 6 for the sake of the argument. He moves half as fast as that Mad Cat, so it may take him, for every move the Mad Cat makes, he's moving 12 inches, right? For every move that Annihilator moves, we'll say it's 6, he's half. So in 6 turns, my Mad Cat has made it 70-something inches, 12 times 6, what is that? 72, I think. Did I do that right? Yeah, 72. Whereas that Annihilator, who's in the same 6 turns, has moved half, 36 inches. Now, on a 4x4, that's the whole table. But if you're playing a game with finite turns and objectives you need to get to, if it's a 6-turn game, and it's going to take that Annihilator in the corner the whole game to get to the other side of the table because that's where you need him, that's not helpful. So if you deploy him towards the center, no matter what your opponent does, he's already started on it with his front foot forward to kind of divert and figure out where he wants to go. Your fast units can sit on the sidelines and be able to adapt to your opponent's gameplay style much more easily than slow ones. For my faster units, I can deploy them more liberally. Their mobility lets them adapt to changing conditions on the board. Plus, by placing them in different areas, I can manipulate my opponent's deployment, forcing them to react to my threats. For example, I might offset some of my faster units during deployment phase off to one flank, hoping to bait my opponent into matching material on that side, but knowing I can get my units somewhere more crucial easily because of their speed. If my opponent cannot direct their matched forces with the same ease I can, I may have effectively created a scenario where, for a few turns into the game, those units are not able to contribute in any meaningful way, effectively allowing me to leverage all my forces into a percentage of my opponent's. In essence, increasing the odds of favorable material trades as we mentioned earlier. A turn or two of leveraging the odds like this in your favor might be enough to get the snowball rolling towards your victory. So to further kind of quantify or explain exactly what I'm saying here is that if you are able to deploy in such a way that for a couple turns of the game, 100% of your forces are only clashing with, let's say, 75% of your opponent's forces because of the way they're deployed, you have 25% of material on them to be able to effectively trade and leverage into their forces. Essentially, they are fighting an uphill battle because you have more stuff to fight them with. And if you can leverage that well and get ahead and get an advantage, by the time those forces that they mispositioned get to the combat, you should already be ahead, and they're still fighting uphill battle at what percentage you have versus what they have left. To further develop this concept though, don't forget about overlapping fire. Set up your slower units to cover key lanes and objectives while your faster mechs can harass, move around the flanks, and effectively adapt to your opponent's actions. It's all about controlling the board and making your opponent second guess their every move. Next up, we're going to talk about spacing. In chess, spacing refers to how much space they have to maneuver pieces. Typically, you'll see opening moves with pawns done in such a way to ensure that their more lethal pieces can be brought into action faster. In Alpha Strike, spacing for me is about how well you use the play area, terrain, and objective locations to maximize your unit's positioning to your advantage. It's not quite as restrictive as chess is with your chess front or your pawn front line. Don't bunch up your forces unless you have a specific reason to do so, especially if your opponent has artillery. You don't want to get blown up with that. Spread out to control more of the board, use terrain and objectives to your advantage. Place your units so they're threatening important areas while staying protected themselves. This will not only help you win on objectives, but also makes it harder for your opponent to concentrate their fire on any one target. To bring that back to a previous statement, also as you're deploying those and holding objectives, set up lanes of fire, overlapping fire to increase the odds of you taking stuff off the table when you go to make trades. Finally, we've come to the last topic, or last concept, and I like to call that king safety. In wargaming, this translates into playing to the objectives and not getting tunnel vision on just destroying your opponent's units. In chess, you'd be protecting your king, because if you lose them, you're going to lose the game. Ask yourself, am I focusing on the win condition? Am I moving towards objectives, scoring points, and positioning my units to secure a win, or am I getting caught up in battles that don't actually get me closer to victory? And here's the second part. Are you keeping your key units safe? In chess, you protect your king. In Alpha Strike, your heavy-hitting units are some of your most valuable pieces. If you can keep them alive while removing your opponents, you're tipping the scales ever so closer in your favor towards a victory. I always ask myself, am I positioning my tentpole units well enough that they can deal damage and also survive? And if I'm targeting my opponent, am I focusing on the pieces that, if removed, will severely limit my opponent's ability to win the game and play? And there you have it, folks. Those are some classic chess concepts that I like to apply to Battletech Alpha Strike. So let's remember, material count, critical mass dictate how much you have to work with. Piece activity determines who has control of the board. Pawn structure is all about smart positioning and deployment. Spacing maximizes your use of the table. And finally, king safety, staying focused on the objectives, protecting your key units, and going for the win. So what do you guys think? Are there any other chess tactics you like to apply to your war games? Let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more wargaming tips, battle reports, hobby-related videos, and so forth. That being said, that's all I've got for you guys today. As always, keep rolling your dice, keep painting your models, and I will catch you guys next time. If you made it this far, you're probably a viewer that already hits that like button when you see a video come up. You're probably already a subscriber, and you probably jump into the comments down below to help support the channel, to help support that algorithm. But if you're looking for some other ways to help support the channel too, make sure you check the description down below. Maybe you want to pick up some paints from Monument Hobbies. That's my paint of choice. The Pro Acrylic line is chef's kiss, good stuff. Maybe you want to check out some of the offerings from Death Designs, where I work in my day job. We got plenty of 3D printed products, as well as MDF terrain, some of the stuff that I have designed myself and we play with here on the channel. And if you're looking to bolster your Battletech ranks, miniatures, and offerings, make sure you check out Bobby from Fortress Miniatures and Games. He's one of the main supporters of the channel as well, and supporting any of these companies helps support what I do and helps to ensure that I can continue to bring content to all of you. If you want to become a super supporter, I highly recommend you guys check out the Patreon. You guys give that extra little edge to help push more content out, and I really do appreciate that. And my ultimate goal on the channel is to continue to be able to not only put out the content we have now, but to get to a point where you can put out more content later, whether that be battle reports or painting tutorials or just more rambles, anything at all. I'd like to be doing more content for you. This is something that I enjoy. I like being able to cast a light into the darkness to bring a little bit of hobby positivity to all of you and make you feel good, and also enjoy playing games myself. As we do the final sign off here though, I do want to go ahead and switch on over and do the scroll of awesome to showcase all the Patreon supporters, the super supporters of the channel, to give them some recognition for helping support what I do. Thank you guys so much, and I will catch you guys next time.